What's up you guys, and welcome back to another Reddit reading video. For the first time ever, we're just gonna go ahead and just jump into it so quickly that golden boys of my hometown get taken down. Trigger warning. Okie dokie. So for part of high school, I lived in a super duper ultra small town in California. If you're familiar with the area, just saying 5 by 8 Mile Island where peanut butter was invented should tell you exactly the town. Since it's super small though, I'll abstain. I lived in a bunch of other places from big cities to tiny villages and third world countries. By the time I started my junior year in this town, also the story takes place about 13 to 14 years ago, so my memory might be a teasy bit foggy. I've got the important stuff though. My point is, I was a bit more cultured than the average of my class, and not known as a poop taker. On this island there was these 3 guys called Nick. That's not their real name, it's just another generic name that all 3 of them happened to share. They weren't particularly good students, they were on the lower end of the economic spectrum, but their parents had been on the island forever. All of them were super fun M&M types, without any talent. All 3 were notorious for hooking up with girls without consent. All 3 were well known for being abusive to the women they dated. To differentiate, I'll say that Fat Nick, Boof Nick, and My Nick. Because yeah, I was one of the lucky girls who dated a Nick. Fat Nick was dating a good friend of mine. He beat her, he cheated on her, roofied her, and then assaulted her. At one point, his abuse was so bad she developed an eating disorder and ended up in rehab and almost dying. Boof Nick dated another good friend. He eventually ended up in jail for other reasons, but he had got hit by our revenge too. We called him Boof because that was his way into drugs I'd never heard of, and frankly, still don't entirely understand. He used to beat up on my friend. He tried to force himself on her. Thankfully, she's a giant and fending him off, but he was the reason she didn't date until her 30s. My Nick was, oh boy, started off okay, but he broke my nose and then sodomized me when I was 16. I admit I didn't believe my friends when they tried to warn me. It wasn't until it happened to me that after I lost my poop. After that happened, initially I was broken. I mean, coming back from that is harsh. I tried to kill myself twice. Got pretty close, we stayed dating. I just couldn't leave. I tried about 9 times. To this day, if I'm walking down the street and I hear a loud clicking sound, I go into full panic mode and my husband has to take me somewhere else. Every time I broke things off with him, he'd find me. I didn't have a car, so he'd drive by where I was walking and yell at me to get in. Unlike my friends, my beautiful, wonderful, wholesome, innocent friends, I have an attitude. My pride will kill me one day. No matter how terrified I felt, I never got in the car. Still, we'd get back together. It took about 2 years before the revenge actually happened. By then, all 3 of us girlies were about to be safely on our way to other cities and states for college. The friend who I dated, Boof, had pictures, but the police said it had been too long for any of that to matter. The friend who dated Fat Nick was the kicker. Boof and mine might have taken drugs, but Fatty was the dealer. We planned a party at Fat's house. My buddy had reached back out to her ex and reconciled, and it was her birthday. What better way to celebrate rekindling the romance? Boof and his now ex weren't on speaking terms, so she came with me and my Nick. At this point, we were all 18 at least. Not able to drink, that's for sure. Fat's girl and I put the moves on our respective men. Boof was doing Boof things and pawing stupidly at a freshman in the corner. We got them all very drunk, and then we started with the, "Babe, I've never tried this. Will you try it with me?" for E, which was called Thiz. Boof was somewhere else. Fat and I took some. Thinking they were going to get us high and sneak us off into another room, another friend actually overheard them talking about swapping with each other once they were too high to notice. But because they were so full of themselves, they never thought that we didn't actually take anything. We just acted like we did. About 20 or so minutes later, we gave them the whole, "We're gonna go freshen up. We'll meet you in the bedroom" deal. Peeps of Reddit, the reason that's so common in every dumb high school movie is because teenagers are idiots, and it works. Over and over, always. I don't know how I dated someone that dumb for that long. Whatever. We slid into the bathroom of Boof's ex and then crawled out the window. We then called the police. One of us complained about the noise. One of us mentioned children drinking, and I told them someone had a gun and they were threatening people. That was true actually. Fatty had his dad's gun whenever his girlfriend didn't want to make out. He would take it out, stuff it in her mouth, take the safety off, and then he'd laugh when she started crying. I cannot stress enough what freaking monstrous trash these boys were. The police came. We were down the block when they did. Fat's parents bailed him out, but he lost his scholarship at Chico State and ended up going to the local JC. Boof was in jail, not prison, for 4 months. He was then released on parole, which he violated. My Nick was found jerking off in a bedroom with his pants around his ankles, looking like a moron he is when the police actually got there. His brother knew the police, so he was out pretty fast. I wasn't done with him though. He was pretty mad that I left him at the party. I was just a little bit more angry than he was though. I'll wrap up the other 2 boys before I get into that. Fatty's lady is married with 2 kids now. The guy is really awesome. Fatty himself died 7 years after this went down from, I believe, heart murmur. My friend that dated Boof went to an art school and she makes super cute costume cosplays that she sells on Etsy. Seems to be doing great by her IG post. Boof Oh man. He took to the local bars pretty heavily. At one point, he was at a bar talking to some old gay man. Apparently, Poof didn't realize the man was gay until he was hitting on him. The old man invited Poof to his apartment after the bar closed. From what I heard, he attempted to initiate something with Poof. Drunkenly, Poof beat the guy to death. That happened 4 years after the fact. He had gotten out at one point, then did something with arson charges. He's been in prison since. My neck, his revenge didn't see any massive nuclear things. His brother got him out of jail. His brother was a thug type who bred blue-nosed pit bulls for fighting. But he wanted better for his baby brother. He genuinely thought that I would be the one to get his brother out of that town and set him straight. Because he thought his brother was doing so well, he was being financially supported, and Big Brother was understandably worried about when he discovered we'd broke up for good because I was leaving for college. Big Brother arranged a meetup for me to beg on his brother's behalf. From there, I showed him countless pictures of every time Nick touched me in an unkind way. Cops might not have cared, but Big Brother knew I was a sweet girl. The cops might not have cared, but Big Brother knew I was a sweet girl, and he knew Nick could get bad when he was high. I also had videos on my phone of Nick drinking, underage, getting high, and throwing cash that his brother gave him on the tables for gambling and then losing, then calling his brother for more with some sob story about how he was mugged or left his wallet somewhere. Always some BS. Big Brother always believed it. Right up until he saw proof. He cut Nick off after that. Nick showed up at my dorm 2 cities over a few months later with flowers and jewelry, saying he knew he messed up and I was the one. My RA came out with me and pretended to be my boyfriend. Nick started calling me a whore and making a big scene in the courtyard. Police were called again. These actually seemed to give a dang. They took him away. I didn't hear from him again after I left the state. Kept tabs on him for a while just to make sure he was still miserable. He got a job with the city, working with kids at a local park. My mom was ready with the complaint about seeing him openly carry around 6 years old. He lost his job with no idea as to who did it. He started dating a literal hooker and renting her out to his friends for cash. He's still in that town, slowly getting gentrified into homelessness. Still with that girl, still thinks he's going to be a rapper. Generally seems like he's just bidding time until he dies. He's got a record, thanks to me. No one in that town wants to hire him. Only a matter of time. I'm okay with this. Jeez, those boys live a terrible life and sad and just everything. That is horrible. They got their just desserts though for being terrible as teenagers though. Let's read one more r/ProRevenge story. We'll never see each other again. Think again. I was bullied relentlessly from 3rd to 7th grade by multiple people in class or upper grades. After I graduated to 8th grade, I received a Facebook message from Andy. A boy had been bullying me and harassing me from the very beginning of it all. I would post the exact message, but it was extremely vulgar and long. He ended it by saying that since he would never see each other again, he could put it all out in the open about how much of an idiotic, ugly, and loser I was. Of course, he used a more colorful dictionary with those words, but you get the idea. However, there was one problem. My parents owned a large wood chipper, and his father owned a tree cutting business, and would often rent from them for much larger jobs. During the summer, I noticed him walk and talk to my uncle. Then I realized a golden opportunity I had been given. I loaded Facebook on my laptop to bring up the message. I then approached his dad and tell him, "Your son sent this message a few days after graduating, and I think it's really important you read it." He raised an eyebrow first, but took a look at my laptop. As he read, I could visibly see his face turn blood red and his hand shook as he gripped the sides of my laptop harder and harder. I think he reread the entire thing over again just to make sure what he was reading. He even clicked the profile to make sure it had indeed been his own son who sent it. Finally, he gave me my computer back and told me he was so sorry for his son's behavior and language, and that he would most certainly be dealing with Andy the moment he got home. It took me 2 months to hear back about the fallout. Andy's older and way nicer brother, Grant, was friends with my sister, who told her, and then she told me. Andy was grounded for the entire summer, fall, and winter break. His parents canceled his trip and was going to take him to the beach with their student youth group at church, canceled his summer camp trip, going to hold him back from getting his driving permit for a full year, took away all his games and computer. Instead of going with his dad and brother on their hunting trips, he would be sent to his grandparents' house to help clean. His social media passwords were changed so he didn't have access to them. Deleted his Xbox account, and Andy would have to work for his dad during this tree cutting the entire summer and winter holiday. There were more punishments, but I honestly cannot recall them. I ruined his life for a good 2 to 3 years and destroyed his relationship he had with his father and mother. Probably not forever, but they certainly no longer saw them as a well-behaved youngest child. It was so satisfying. Geez, that kid has some deep-rooted hate in him to be sending messages like that. That was an extreme punishment, but he got what he deserved. The top comment says, "So when I read owned a wood chipper, I was terrified the story was going in a totally different direction." Me too. Well, thank you guys so much for watching another Reddit reading video from r/ProRevenge. Remember, we have robot reading videos on the Reddit Robo channel. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and you can follow the Instagram if you'd like. We post a video every single day on this channel if you want to subscribe, so we'll always be here. I love you guys so much, and goodbye.